is Matt Marshall. I'm founder and CEO of VentureBeat, and today I'm talking with Ken Spangler, the EVP of IT and CIO of Global Operations Technology at FedEx. Welcome, Ken.
Hello, Matt. Thanks for having me today.
Ken, we're talking today about the performance in data centers and the investments you're making. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're investing in the performance of the data center?
You know, FedEx has had a long history of running massive scale data centers all over the world. And, you know, maybe the first thing I would say is that we have a genealogy of acquisition. And so one of the things that, you know, probably always surprised me in the early part of my career, less in the later part of my career, was that every time you acquire a company, it's amazing how many data centers you get. And so, you know, we've taken a really different strategy in recent time, and that is consolidation of data centers. And we went through a period of time that we went to what we call a 40-20 strategy, 40% in our own data centers, 40% in colo data centers, 20% in the cloud as the journey away from our own data centers. And then back in 2020, we decided we're going to take a very bold strategy, and we are going to ultimately have a 50-50 strategy. So over time, 2025 being the starting point, we'll really have 0% in FedEx-owned data centers. But again, we will run, you know, massive cloud-native FedEx stack in colo data centers.
So you talk about running your own data stack in these co-location facilities. So you still have a lot of control over the performance. So what does performance mean for you when we talk about performance in that stack in terms of raw capability?
So we looked at the colo strategy as more sophisticated, more advanced, and the ability to be more secure, more stable, et cetera. So, you know, ultimately, that's what we're after. You know, we have mass scale, you know, just our backbone messaging is more than 100 billion transactions a day. And obviously we run in 220 countries around the world. And so both between the colo and the cloud side of this, it's super important for us to, you know, drive that, again, you know, not to be repetitive, but that security is number one, but definitely, you know, the scalability, the connectivity, and, you know, on and on, sustainability is so important today. So that's really it's been a balanced approach of why we decided to do it.
Right. Yeah. So you've got the security of data is prerogative, and then you're leveraging these hyperscaler cloud offerings to get performance, but also controlling your own stack and co-locations for a good part of it. What do you think is the most important part of that stack that you leverage for performance, right? Things like, you know, latency that's necessary for these transactions.
So as we migrate our FedEx stack, we've established a cloud native minimum so that, you know, not only do we, you know, have the security and the scalability, et cetera, latency is so important there, you know, network is everything to us, but it's also that we have a consistent stack. You know, everybody talks about, you know, sprawl, whether it's, you know, application sprawl, data sprawl, you know, even, you know, infrastructure sprawl. And this is our chance to really, you know, drive efficiency and consolidation. And by having a consistent stack, now don't get me wrong, there are still some exceptions, but we have a legacy zone that we run, but it's very rare. It takes a heck of an exception to get into a legacy zone. We manage the square footage of the legacy down to the absolute minimums, and this migration has allowed us to drive towards much more consistency.
Okay, great, Ken. Can you talk through what you can control in that stack when it comes to things like high performance computing? You know, you talk about exascale. You use other terms at FedEx for this. You know, do you think about the GPUs at that level? Do you think about using, you know, deep learning, open source frameworks to become more efficient with your data and your workflows in your stack? Can you talk a little bit about that?
AI on things in motion to us is the most important. So we think of things like, you know, intelligent supply chains, IoT, you know, millions and millions of packages a day connected by sensors. We talked about automation, and even, you know, we've always been massively automated, but automation at a different scale. And then we talk about autonomy. And so when you think of, you know, all of that means, you know, and I don't mean to sound generic, but yes to the answer to your questions, But we use our colo and cloud strategy to balance that so that base load is much more about our colo and all that bursting and hyperscale is much more about what we do in the cloud.
Yeah, where does that edge processing come in, right? Is that all on the hyperscale side, or is it a mix of the co-location side as well? I mean, presumably that IoT, right? Those billions of packages, hundreds of billions of transactions are distributed. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges there?
Inside our company, I talked about the 0-50-50 strategy, and that's what we've called it. Now, inside our company, we talk often about a 0-50-50-50 strategy. And while the math might sound funny there, it's because at the scale of what's possible on the edge and what we're enabling on the edge, especially around IoT, automation, and autonomy, we're driving a different level of compute on the edge. We believe that using some of our locations in creating a form of a mini edge data center is one of the ways we're going to serve with much lower latency. So the massive scale of IoT and autonomy, the massive data events of it, means we need super low latency. That's part of our strategy to keep low latency, mass scale at the edge.
Ken, you talk about the edge, you talk about the integrity of data, the security of it being paramount. Gen AI, generative AI, these large language models that have come along and kind of shaking up the enterprise world right now, requires your data house to be in order, right? To make these calls on your databases, to get the efficient responses for users, presumably who are coming along to do ever more sophisticated natural language searches of your systems. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing at FedEx to get ready for this revolution in generative AI? Do you see it as a revolution?
Definitely see it as a revolution. And, there's the hype is incredible. As we've all known, the hype cycle has a lot of emotion in it. But don't take that statement in the wrong way. We think it's incredibly enabling. But we thought it before everybody started talking about, ChatGPT and generative AI. Because, in a business like ours, if you think about our ability to optimize and especially optimize, but, drive efficiencies from demand, from order entry and demand, somebody's going to ship something somewhere to somewhere. And then at every operational handling point, our ability to optimize there all the way to what we provide to our customers. Because ultimately, if the supply chains become more intelligent, our customers benefit and our operation benefits. So, AI and all forms of, in motion optimization have been super important to us. So I would have probably had the same answer if it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. We've created a lot of AI models this year that have much more sophistication around our estimated delivery date or actual delivery date. And while it was always very good, we were able to drive up the percent accuracy significantly just this year alone. So basically, we're large language models and all forms of optimization are skyrocketing all over our business. And I would say it starts with how we interface the customer and how we drive our operations. It's the two big buckets. But in there's incredible opportunity where we're taking advantage of it.
Ken, thanks. We're asking some people we talk with, what are the most powerful trends or what is the most powerful trend in 2023? Can you talk a little bit about that and in terms of how it impacts your business?
Most people, when you talk about digital twins, they think of something that is a digital twin that's static. I made a twin of this and I can run simulations. And that's incredibly powerful. There's no doubt about it. That's incredibly powerful. But we think of it as a live in motion digital twin, of which we're optimizing in real time. And I'm friends with a tremendous entrepreneur who started a company that's really focused in the industrial metaverse. And it was really interesting because as him and I talk all the time, the metaverse is something people think of as not the real world, right? But the industrial metaverse is exactly this. It's the real world in motion with AI over it. So you're making real-time optimization decisions. And so to me, that is the largest trend, the scale to be able to do that. And as times the ability of AI to drive a different level of intelligence and learning models. I mean, it's really about learning models, right? That to me is the trend that changes everything.
Fascinating stuff, Ken. One last question, a little bit of a curveball. We like asking folks is there anything you've learned from your professional life and maybe the technology, or maybe something else that you've brought into your personal life?
It's a great question. One of the things is, you have to manage change, and one of the things about being a technologist, especially in a technology business like FedEx, where technology is everything, managing change in all of our lives and what we do is, when you do that really well, life feels a lot less stressful. So, maybe a strange answer to your question, but, I study all the principles of organizational change management that allowed us to change technology at massive scale and massive pace for many years. And then I found that that really applies to all forms of your life and makes things a lot easier.
Ken, yeah, well, if there's anything we can be assured of in 2023, it's more change and faster change, and you're dealing with that in motion and change. Congratulations on what you've done so far, and good luck with the rest of your journey.
Well, thank you, Matt. We look forward to what's possible right now, and as somebody who's had a long technology career, what I would say is what I thought was possible just 5 years ago versus what today is, I could have never imagined. And I can only imagine what the next 2 to 5 years are going to bring. So what an exciting time. If I were starting my career over again, I'd want to start it right now. Any young person leaving university today, the opportunities are endless.
Ken, hope to connect again soon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Matt. Have a great day.
And thank you for watching. Remember to check out VentureBeat.com for more stories about the tech revolution. Subscribe to our newsletters and check out our other VB in Conversation videos at VentureBeat.com.